Okay, folks, it's 6 p.m. I'd like to get this council meeting started. We have 3 items for action on new business this evening. Item A will be the first reading of 2 readings, the first reading. Request that these other items be all read by title only, and if that's okay with council. Thank you. Okay, for item A, Mr. Tisch. Okay. Item B, Mr. Dragish. And item C, Mayor.
Got it.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Sorry. B and C will be suspended with 2 readings and until title only.
Yes, that's correct. That's what I said. The last 2 will be by title only. And 1 reading. Correct.
Thanks.
The first one will be only 1 reading. The first reading tonight. That's all. There'll be 2 readings, but the first one's tonight.
Yes.
Okay. We are going to have an executive session tonight too. Immediately after the meeting, or the last item of the meeting, and we'll have a motion for that too at that time. Any other revisions to the agenda as presented this evening? If not, let's stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Dragish?
Yes.
Mr. Cosar?
Yes.
Mr. Morvay? Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Mr. Tisch?
Here. Okay, thank you. I'm on number 4. You all received the minutes of the August 20th meeting. Are there any revisions to those minutes? If not, they stand approved and on record. Under communications, Mr. Tisch?
I had nothing, Mr. President.
Okay, Mr. Tisch. Mr. Dragish?
I have nothing.
Okay. Mayor?
I have nothing.
Okay. Mr. City Manager?
No correspondence.
No correspondence. Number 6, reports of committees and the City Manager. Mr. Dragish?
I have nothing.
Nothing. Mayor Kosher?
Nothing.
Well, we're just going through this way too fast. Joe?
The reports are quite a few things here. Obviously, there's 3 items on legislation to be dealt with this evening. First reading on the one item which cleans up our conditional use permit ordinance. There's no actual language for revoking such a permit, so that's what we're adding, a language that would address what we would do in a case of somebody that was given a conditional use permit and then failed to meet the criteria of which they were granted that permit. And then we have the 2 petitions to be submitted to the board, which we hope for passage this evening. A number of items. The biggest discussion has been with rock salt, road salt. We had a statewide conference call with ODOT this week, actually, on Tuesday, and the ODOT had selected to reject the second bid, which came in about $20 less than the previous bid. If you recall, we paid $27 per ton for road salt last year. The summer bid, we had purchased it for $46 a ton. The winter bid that they rejected the first time was $186 a ton. The most recent one was $146 a ton. All of the communities that participated in the conference call were under the same impression to reject those bids. They had also made mention there's a number of counties in southern Ohio that received no bid. So it's going to be a difficult winter this year. They're looking at other options. One option was to purchase a barge of salt from an outside supplier, not from Ohio, but they're looking at Chile, Mexico, and India as suppliers of salt. If they get enough communities together to purchase a barge, it would have to be at point of delivery, so you'd have to provide trucking from Ashtabula to Canfield if we go that route. And even at that, we're looking at somewhere around $99 a ton. The county engineer in Trumbull County hosted a meeting today on the same issue, and they're looking at other options. The one I had mentioned, in New Jersey, there's a supplier in New Jersey that's purchasing salt from India. And it would be delivered at the port in New Jersey. You'd have to transport from New Jersey here. What they're looking at is the possibility of rail service from New Jersey to the old Ravenna-Arson area, and that being the transfer station, if they would dump it there and then communities could pick it up at that location. But they don't have any of, they've got the salt cost, I believe, is around $60 or $70 a ton, and if the transportation can get it to us at less than the $99 a ton, it might be a viable option. But that's where we're at right now, short of conserving and doing what we did last year. Just at the end of the year when everybody was running out of salt, we reduced our salt into just the intersections and hills. Maybe the way we'll have to go this year. We have currently 700 ton, which we're better off than most communities because we did participate in the summer bid, which many of them opt out of. And we have our bin full. I don't know what we're going to do from this point, and I'll continue to keep you abreast of where we're going with that. The other option that was brought up today, and again, it's really not suitable to us, but might be something to think about in the future if this continues to grow at this magnitude. There's a lot of slag suppliers that are treating their slag with salt coatings, using a brine mixture or other salt coatings and selling that slag, which would be good, as a aggregate for salt removal or for snow and ice control in the wintertime. However, it has to be under shelter. You have to have that in the salt bin where we have our salt. We don't have anywhere to really store that type of mixture. Short of Redgate, but then we'd have two operations going. We'd have slag at Redgate, salt at the city building, and I don't know that it would really work out in our particular instance. So there's not much out there on the table right now. The best guess, and pretty much the ODOT conference concluded with ODOT asking communities to try and make their best deal. Don't depend on ODOT at this time. However, if they do come to some compromise and come up with a better price, they will allow communities to opt in if they can save us some money. But they're encouraging communities to go out on their own and make their best deal. That's how grim it looks right now. Other issues, we had a pre-construction meeting for the Fairview Maple Street. That project, we gave them the go-ahead, and they'll start on or before the 29th. Guessing that's how long it will take to get the materials in and get mobilized. And at the same time, the gas company has moved their operation over there, and hopefully it'll be out of the way in the next week or so that our contractor can get started. We're scheduled the pre-construction meeting for the road program, resurfacing program for next Tuesday, and get that underway as quickly as possible. It was noted yesterday that there was some fire damage to the plastic play equipment up at Greasel Park. I don't know if you were made aware of that or not, but one of the children's tunnels that the kids kind of crawl through, it appears to me as though somebody had started a fire on the top of it and allowed the fire to melt through, because there's probably about a 1-foot diameter hole on the top of it that's melted down, and then there's some sporadic melting underneath it. Nobody had reported it. I guess it was just something that you found when you had gone out there, or some park department. So we don't know how it happened or exactly when it happened, but it's something that we'll have to deal with and see if we can get that one section of equipment at least replaced. The Canfield Baseball Club had notified us of their schedule change. That they were originally planning on doing something to honor their 4 winning teams. Last Saturday during the fair, we kind of asked them if they can reschedule that because of the difficulties of maneuvering traffic around during the fair time, and they have rescheduled the event for next Saturday, or this coming Saturday, September 6th. What their tentative plans are at this point is to use the middle school as a staging area for the teams, their families, have a little presentation on the village green at 3 o'clock, and then get everybody together and process from the village green to the McCune Fields by car, and again hold another celebration or event at McCune Field scheduled at 4 p.m. That's not yet been confirmed to me, but that's kind of the direction they were heading, and I'll get the confirmation on that obviously before Saturday. And just a highlight, I noticed in the paper this week that August was the 10th wettest August on record. And that was reported in the Youngstown Vindicator, and it was only by about a half inch or so of rain that we could have bumped easily into the 3rd or 4th. And lastly, Mark will be requesting an executive session after today's meeting, before we adjourn the meeting, actually. That's pretty much all I have, unless you have any questions.
Any questions for Joe?
Joe, are we going to also have a manager's meeting at the end of tonight's meeting?
Yes, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that as well, that I'd like to meet for a few minutes afterwards to discuss some of the requests from the Park and Rec Department.
What day would that be? What's the date of that meeting? September
17th.
17th?
No, to meet
Tonight.
tonight.
Oh, I'm sorry, you mean
after
after
executive session.
Oh, I'm sorry. They said you want to schedule it for, okay, I'm sorry. Misunderstood you. You okay, Mark?
I'm going to defer my report to executive session, if that's okay.
Very good. Okay.
Joe, I have a comment on your comment. It seems to me when I was a little boy, and Frank McKee was a little boy, so 100,000 years ago, I don't remember salt as such being put on the roads. I remember gravel, small gravel, and primarily in intersections. But if indeed that was the case, and if indeed we would choose to revert back to that if it's available, store that out in the open. Okay. That might be a partial answer.
Yeah.
And there is some binding of the aggregate when it sits out in the weather as well, and you've got to work it and break it up to get it in there. Most communities do that. They mix their salt. Basically, it's a 1/3, 2/3 aggregate to 1/3 salt. The city of Canfield has always prided itself on the dry roads in the wintertime, and we use 100% salt. We only have the one bin for storage, so anything that's going to be undercover will certainly be our salt.
The gravel deal, it's a mess in spring when you go to clean it up.
And that's the downside of it, is that you have catch basins that fill up with it, the roads. There's a lot that there's involved with pricing after the fact versus straight salt.
Chuck, you may have something.
I was just going to touch the point that Joe made.
Okay. Number 7, on recognition of persons desiring to speak before council, may I ask you to step forward to the podium, state your name and address clearly for the record, keep your comments brief. I will name the persons that's written down on this list first. Mr. Makia, you are first up.
Good evening. My name is Frank McKee. I reside at 220 Glenview. However, when the mayor and I were little boys, there wasn't that much traffic here.
There weren't that many roads.
I don't want to go any further, but thank you. I'd like to make a few comments in regard to council's comments at the end of the session. Normally, there have been some inspirational sayings, and there have been a few cases where some comments were made in regard to issues that are going to be on the ballot. But in no cases has there been any rebuttal to these comments. I know I've tried to speak in regard to some of the comments, but apparently you're not allowed to do that. Now last week, there was a gentleman here in the meeting who was able to make a comment in regard to council's comments. That is a first as far as I know, and it appears to me that this person got some favorable treating, which is not available to the normal people in the audience. In truth, the comments were indeed relevant and were a positive addition to what was being said. However, council doesn't normally permit this, and I think there is something to be said for doing this and for allowing residents to participate in these types of things. So my question to council is, which way is it going to be? Comments or no comments? Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Mickler.
Robert Menkler, 81-1 Montgomery Lane. I attend nearly every council session, as you know. We see the same normal group here. And I want to speak tonight to these proposed charter amendments, which will probably be appearing on the ballot in November. I applaud Mr. McKeo's tenacity in going after what he thinks is the way the government should be run and the meetings should be run, in obtaining the necessary signatures and getting the items through for your approval to be put on the ballot. However, I think many of these measures are detrimental to the city. They slow down our meetings. They're not efficient. If we bring in each of the department heads, I expect they'll have to be paid. That will cost the city money. I'm opposed to both of these amendments, and the costs and the time it will involve the city. If the citizens of this city were that concerned about the goings-on in this council, we would see a bigger audience. When they do show up, it's about legitimate concerns within their neighborhood or problems that have arisen. And each of you gentlemen has gone through an election process and been chosen by those citizens to make the decisions for this city. I see no reason why someone should have to be allowed or be given the time slot to speak to each of the issues that we have given you the authority to vote upon. And as for the comments at the end of the session, those to me are strictly comments. And perhaps Mr. McKee is right that, we shouldn't allow, the members of their citizens in the audience to rebut anything. We have our time right now, where I'm standing, to make any comments. We have the ability to look at what's coming up as far as legislation or resolutions and so forth. That if we were concerned about it, as citizens of this city, we're free to come to this council meeting and give you our opinions about those issues. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you much, Mr.
Thank
McKee.
you.
For the record, last council meeting too, Eddie Scribola was here to speak on behalf of one thing that Mr. Morvay could not speak on. He elaborated a little more far forward for us, for our information as council members. That's what he was asked to speak. I permitted him to speak. As president of council, I permitted him to speak on behalf of the fire ward district. Okay? For clarification purposes. Thank you. All right, under 8, there is no new business. New business, number 9. Item A, this will be the first reading. As provisions of section 4.05 of the Charter of the City of Canfield, I move that council dispense with the requirement of full reading of the proposed ordinance and authorize by its title only. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Tisch, discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Dragish?
Yes.
Mr. Kosar?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Mr. Tisch?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Tisch?
Mr. President, I have an ordinance providing for the revocation of conditional use permits by creating a new section 1151.02 in the codified ordinances of the City of Canfield. Mr. President, this would constitute first reading.
Thank you, Mr. Tisch. Item B, as per section 4.05 of the Charter of the City of Canfield, I move to dispense with the requirement of 2 readings of the proposed ordinance and authorize adoption of the same upon its first reading. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mayor, discussion. There be none, the clerk please call the roll.
Mr. Dragish?
Yes.
Mr. Kosar?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Mr. Tisch?
Yes.
And as provision in section 4.05 of the Charter of the City of Canfield, I move the council dispense with the requirement of a full reading of the proposed ordinance and authorize by its title only. Do I have a second? Second. Mr. Dragish, discussion? There being none, the clerk please call the roll.
Mr. Dragish?
Yes.
Mr. Cosar?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Mr. Tisch?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Dragish.
Yes, Mr. President, I have an ordinance providing that a charter amendment shall be submitted to the electors of the City of Canfield for adoption or rejection at the regular municipal election to be held on November 4th, 2014, pursuant to Section 11.03 of the Charter of the City of Canfield and Article 18, Section 9 of the Constitution of Ohio.
Very good. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mayor, discussion?
Yes.
Mr. Tisch.
The city attorney has advised city council that this is an item that has been placed before city council as is required by the Ohio Revised Code because of the number of signatures that we have, or that Mr. McKee gathered for his petition. I guess I personally am concerned about why the state legislature should mandate city council to vote on something that we don't approve of in one fashion or another. If that is what the requirement is, let them mandate the Board of Elections or whomever to place that on the ballot. I will be voting no on this amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Tisch. Any more discussion? The clerk please call the roll.
Mr. Dragish?
Yes.
Mr. Cosar?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Mr. Tisch?
No.
Motion passes. The number is?
2014-40.
Thank you, Patty. Item C. As provision of section 4.05 of the Charter of the City of Canfield, I move to dispense with the requirement of 2 readings of the proposed ordinance and authorize adoption of the same upon its first reading. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Mayor, discussion? There being none, the clerk please call the roll.
Mr. Dragish?
Yes.
Mr. Cosar?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Mr. Tisch?
Yes.
And as provision in section 4.05 of the Charter of the City of Canfield, I move the council dispense with the requirement of a full reading of the proposed ordinance and authorized by its title only. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Dragish, discussion? There being none, the clerk please call the roll.
Mr. Dragish?
Yes.
Mr. Cosar?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Mr. Tisch?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, Mayor.
Mr. President, I have an ordinance providing that a charter amendment shall be submitted to the electors of the City of Canfield for adoption or rejection at the regular municipal election to be held on November the 4th, 2014, pursuant to Section 11.03 of the Charter of the City of Canfield and Article 18, Section 9 of the Constitution of the State of Ohio. I move for passage.
Thank you, Mayor. And do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Dragish, discussion? If not, the clerk please call the roll.
Mr. Dragish?
Yes.
Mr. Cosar?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Mr. Tisch?
No.
And the number, motion passes.
2014-41.
Thank you, Patty. All right, under Councilman's comments, Mr. Tisch.
Mr. Minkler, I'd like to commend you for your comments this evening. I'm not sure that I could have articulated them as well as you did, but I appreciate those comments and I share your opinion with regard to these amendments or proposed amendments. I guess I take offense to the proposed amendments for the reasons that you had indicated, in that I believe that I was elected to City Council to evaluate things that come before this council, not by necessarily taking in everybody's comments and voting by the majority of those that speak to me, but by my evaluation of the facts and what is in the best interests of the residents of the City of Canfield. That's what my intention would be on all of these items. If anybody felt that we had some items that we ought to know coming from the public, whether it's from Mr. McKee or Mr. Minkler or whomever, feel free to give me a phone call. Feel free to express your opinion during the citizens' comments of the meeting, but to allow discussion to go on and on, to me, seems a little bit of a waste of time. With regard to the department heads being in attendance, I think that is a direct conflict of the charter, in that the city manager is the head of the city of Canfield. He appoints employees. They are responsible to the manager. If a citizen is going to come into a meeting and potentially grill, if you will, a department head, that's not what they get paid for at that point. And I think those discussions can be directed through the city manager, and they can receive the same information. And again, as your comment was, we don't have that many people in city council meetings that seem to be upset with the way things are being run. So I'm opposed to that. Again, thank you for your comments. That concludes my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Tisch. Mr. Dragish? I have none. Mayor?
Well, I admire you, and you said it better than I could have. Chuck, you echoed it perfectly. Frank, it's your right. But I'll tell you what, we're going to show the world that we have our underwear all knotted up when we go through with this. If we don't put it on the ballot, we're going to pay the legal fees. That doesn't make sense. But I agree wholeheartedly with Councilman Tisch. It pains me to vote yes for this. That's all I have.
I'll add the same thing what Mr. Tisch said. Bob, excellent. And Chuck, excellent too. I'm with you 100%. It's a sad day for Canfield. Okay, I will need a motion for executive session.
We didn't set the date of the public hearing for the first item.
Okay, sorry, Joe. When would you like to have the next meeting for us?
Next meeting would be
Is 5:50? Chuck, you have something?
Well, I was just going to comment that I will not be in attendance at next meeting. Not that that makes any difference, but just so council was aware of that.
Okay, that's okay, correct? We're going to be at the next meeting, so it'll be at 5:50
Yes.
p.m. at the next meeting for the public hearing. Okay?
September 16th.
Thank you so much for that. All right? Now we need a motion for executive session. Mr. Tisch?
Isn't that 17th?
17th.
Okay.
September 17th.
Okay, Mr. President, I move that we go into executive session on a matter of pending litigation. Will we or won't we need action to follow?
And do I have a second on that? Second.
No action to follow.
Second, Mr. Dragish. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Dragish?
Yes.
Mr. Kozar?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Mr. Tisch?
Yes.
Okay, we will adjourn to executive session. We will be not reconvening, so therefore this meeting will be adjourned after our session. Thank you so much for coming.
We were going to...
Yeah, we're going to...